Salem.
At KSMO, time for us to sit down with our friends from the Salem Memorial Hospital. Amber Hogan has made it back in today. It's been such a long time. First, I hadn't seen you in forever, and now I'm seeing you twice, 3 weeks? 3 or 4 weeks?
Yep.
Well, it's good to have you.
Well, thank you. With me changing positions, I'm also over the ambulance. So
Sure.
I think they thought I should come and talk about the ambulance today. So next week is National EMS Week.
Right, I was going to say. So this is for EMS week, but that's not till next week.
Right.
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 All right. Well, first off, you understand all this because you've done all this.
I have,
You
yeah.
know, you're one of the few people I know that wound
Yeah.
therapy. I mean, you
I've done a lot in the
You
hospital,
have, and it's
yeah.
pretty amazing. Well,
Yeah.
first off, congratulations to you for having that experience.
Yeah, thank you.
And which is vast, obviously, but there's a lot of different things that go with that because there's a lot of different protocols for each different thing you're talking about. You know, nurse practitioner one thing, and EMS one thing, emergency doctor another thing. I mean,
Yes.
there really is different ways you have to do this and approach things, aren't there?
There is. So, normally when you think about emergency medical services, you think about paramedics and EMTs. Paramedics are the advanced practice on top of the EMT. But anymore, there is such a shortage of paramedics around. We don't have many schools. Raleigh used to have a school. They don't have a school anymore. So we have a shortage on them. So now, fortunately, I was able to go to work as I was going through nurse practitioner school. They allowed me to work on the ambulance as an RN. Our training are similar. Paramedics, when they go to school, they go for a couple years, just like RNs can with an associate's degree. Paramedics focus more on trauma-related stuff. RNs don't get that, but our RNs at the Salem Memorial and the ED, we all have to go through a trauma course every 4 years. So we see some of it here in Salem because of the river and outside activities and stuff like that. So,
and you're in an area where there's hunting and there's gunshots. I mean,
yes.
it doesn't happen very often, but
Yeah.
occasionally.
So we have, with the shortage of paramedics, which we have quite a few, but sometimes our coverage doesn't, because we keep 2 crews, 24 hours shifts and stuff like that. So sometimes we have several of our RNs in the emergency department that will pick up shifts on the ambulance too. So people around town know a lot of the paramedics and
Sure.
EMTs because a lot of people see them because the community uses them. So if anybody sees an unfamiliar face, it's probably one of our RNs that's picked up one of the shifts. But they are trained and go through competencies and stuff like that to be able to work on the ambulance. So they're right up there with the paramedics.
Right.
So
Yeah, and since you had a chance to serve on ambulance, there are all different kinds of calls you get. Now you start talking about like car accidents is one thing, but somebody falling could be another, could be a stroke, could be a suspected heart attack. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in preparation even before you arrive, isn't there?
yes, and a big part of our emergency medical services community is our dispatchers from Dent County Sheriff's Office. They get a lot of the firsthand information, and they are relaying it through the radio to kind of prep us whenever they call us out to what we are going on. Sometimes they don't get a lot of information, but our dispatchers are really, really good at their job. So they try and get us up to speed as much as they possibly can.
Sure.
So then we are kind of prepared. Sometimes it doesn't match with what is.
You're having a person try and report it, and they're not medically probably trained.
Right. And I mean, we get a range of calls, like you were saying, from falls that the patient can't get up off of the floor. We call them lift assists. They don't necessarily sometimes they're injured and sometimes they're not, and then they will decide not to be taken to the hospital to get checked out, which is okay.
Right.
And
But
then
you know, as a nurse practitioner, that fall initially may not hurt,
exactly.
and then the next day,
Yes.
and you may have a cracked bone. You may not have a broken bone, but
Yes.
it may crack.
Yeah.
And then the next day, you wake up and you're like, holy cow.
Yeah, and it's very important. Some of our older population, they don't quite realize this, but a lot of people are on blood thinners for a range of different things. They could have had a heart attack in the past, or they could have blood clots, or multitude of different things. And anytime that somebody's on one of those blood thinners and they fall, and even if they hit their head, they don't have a bump or anything like that. They're very, very susceptible of having a brain bleed. So
Right.
it is very, very something that they need to do is just come to the hospital when EMS comes if they call, because you might not even know that you have a brain bleed until you get a CT. And that's something that we do when somebody is on blood thinners, is that's part of the plan of care for them, to just make sure that nothing is bleeding in their head.
I think a lot of people, unfortunately, Amber, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but we glorify things through what we see on TV and in movies. So brain bleed, they're probably thinking it's gushing out of your head, where in reality, you may bump your head and have a very slow brain bleed, a trickle here and there, but that's going to become serious, or could become serious very soon, because you are losing blood. It's in your brain. It's putting pressure on your brain, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't see the blood. I
No,
mean,
you don't see it.
you
You
know,
don't even feel it, really.
Yeah, so sometimes people will get a headache, but a lot of the times, no. They people surrounding them might see a change in their mental status or something like that, which might clue them in that they might need to go get checked out. But that's something that always should be in the back of your head if you're on blood thinners and you fall. So, especially if you hit your head.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you hit your head, for sure. And a lot of times people on blood thinners, I've seen it happen where they get a bruise, and the bruise becomes huge
Yeah.
because obviously that's blood underneath your skin.
Yeah.
And when people see that and they're thinking, "Oh my God, that's serious." Well, yes, and maybe
Maybe no.
not.
Yeah.
But it's not that little itty bitty bruise that you used to get when you were a little kid, but now
Right.
it's a big old bruise, and it's turning yellow and purple and all kinds of beautiful colors. Kind
Yeah.
of looks like Northern Lights on your arm, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's other things that when we start talking about EMS, always they have to be very observant too, because a lot of times people say, "I don't know what happened to them." Say somebody fell, they tripped, or they did something. And I have talked to some EMS and EMTs that sit there and they see these frayed rugs that are on the floor, and people, they're tripping over the rug, and they said, "Get rid of the rug."
Right.
I mean, some common sense things, but people don't think about it. They've had that rug for 35, 40 years.
Right.
And it's finally just wore out, and it's got a little frayed end. But that frayed end, when you don't walk and lift your feet as high as you used to, becomes a problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And, and some of our calls on the ambulance are, and I don't want to say they're trivial or anything like that, but a lot of the calls are like that. And the paramedics, the RNs, whoever's working on the ambulance is there to help the community. And so that could mean, like we were saying before, a lift off of the floor, or sometimes people have really bad, accidents,
Sure.
lacerations, trauma stuff, car wrecks or swimming accidents and stuff like that down on the river. So we are definitely here for the community for a wide range of things. And so, depending on what's being said to us in dispatch, the paramedics, the RNs working on the ambulance have to be pretty much ready for absolutely anything, because they don't know what is actually going on until they get on scene. So they are very good at assessing the situation and we are very lucky to have air ambulances or
Yeah,
helicopters
right.
around. We have Aerovac in Salem, and then we have Phelps Air right next to us in Rolla. So the paramedics are very good at assessing the situation and determining whether or not our local hospitals are going to be able to handle what is going on, or if it's really that bad and we need to get that patient to the trauma center, or we need to get them to a stroke center or a STEMI center very quickly. So like I said, they're very good at being able to do that and getting the patient where they feel like they can be treated best.
Since you have done this, I'm going to throw this out because a lot of people always scoff at me when I tell them this, is that I don't care where you are, and you should always have with you somehow a list of the medications
Yes.
or any allergies or drug interactions that you have had in the past. Reason being, if something should happen to them.
Yeah.
It's too late to ask them. Maybe they're knocked out. Maybe they just can't even speak. Maybe it's a stroke and they can't talk.
Yeah.
If that's on them and it can easily be accessed, it can be treated in the right way.
Yes.
Otherwise, there could be, I don't want to say bad treatment, but there could be something that could jeopardize their life because nobody knew.
Right. And, some people think that the ambulance personnel, all they're doing is picking you up and transporting you to the hospital.
Well, that's not
But
true.
no, they are, they're, depending on what the situation is and if it calls for it, they're the ones starting the IVs and before they transport them to a hospital. And then if they need to, giving people medicines in the back of the ambulance. And so it's very, very essential for them to also know what medications that people are on, what they're allergic to, because they don't want to cause a reaction or something to happen to them before they get to the
Right.
hospital. So
Yeah, and this is very important, especially if you're traveling to take us. You're going to go to a hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. They have no idea who you are.
no, it would be very nice. And I know some of the bigger health systems now have the electronic medical record that a lot of the other health systems have, so they can access that. But if you are in rural communities, they are not necessarily going to be using that because of the expense of it.
Especially
So-
their system, which is
Yes.
very expensive.
So, going to a hospital, we're not going to know, especially if you've never been at Salem Hospital before, we can't access that kind of stuff, unfortunately. So, having a list of medication on you, or as far as like the ambulance goes, it's really good to see medical ID bracelets or necklaces. I have seen people actually go and get tattoos for people that are insulin dependent diabetics and stuff like that. So anything that's going to be able to tell us, because like you said before, people can have conditions where they pass out and the patient's not able to talk to us.
Right.
And we're as working on the ambulance trying to figure out what's going on with the patient, especially if they're down here by themselves or they're with people that they don't know very well. So it's very, very nice to have that kind of stuff to be able to kind of give them an inkling of what is going on.
All right, so I know we're not there yet, but we're getting real close to the summer season, and this is a lot of times where people all think they're superheroes.
Yes.
Because I can battle through anything in that heat. Don't worry about it. I'm tough. Okay. There are some pretty serious conditions that can happen to you with the heat. Heat stroke.
Yeah.
Heat exhaustion's bad, not as bad as heat stroke, but it's bad. Don't play with these things. Once you get affected by them,
Right.
Amber, and you can probably speak to this better, you're kind of susceptible to them for quite a long time. So when it may not even be as hot as it was the time you got your heat exhaustion, you're going to feel lightheaded, or maybe you just feel just drained.
Yeah, you have to be very careful once you've had that heat stroke. And some people don't quite realize that, it's especially if it's like a day that there's not very much humidity, and you just really need to be aware of what that temperature is, because you think it might not affect you and you've been out
Sure.
there 6-8 hours and it only be 82 degrees, but that could possibly, if you've had a history of a heat stroke, really affect you that day. So you have to be very careful that you don't end up back in the hospital, the ER, or calling the ambulance.
Right. And if you know it's going to be hot, you definitely don't want to be out there in the peak times of that heat either.
Right,
So
right.
try and schedule things in probably the best times would be the earlier morning. I know people say in the evening. In the evening, it's usually very humid.
Right.
And very warm, so you probably don't want to get out there at that time. But, obviously you want to stay well hydrated. Come the summertime, please stay well hydrated.
Yeah.
And let your body perspire it out. That's the good thing. That's actually a good thing.
It is.
It's getting rid of that lactic acid and those
Yes.
toxins out of your system. However, if you don't replenish, guess what? Your body's going to start pulling it out of your organs.
Yes.
That's not a good thing, is it?
And people think that staying hydrated, and I'm not, push water. Yes, but also since you're perspiring, you're also losing electrolytes
Well, absolutely.
too. So be sure and get in there along with your water something that has salt in it, something that has potassium, like Powerade, Gatorade, and you don't have to get the ones that have sugar in it. They make the ones that don't have sugar in it. But even if you can, and I know soda might be a bad word to some people, but it's got quite a bit of sodium in it. So drink your water, but also be sure and you get something with those electrolytes in it.
Usually the problem with drinking soda when you're really thirsty is it makes you thirstier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can never get enough.
Yeah. Just
I
make sure
understand.
you're getting that water
Yeah,
with it
get
too.
that water with it too. Absolutely. But these are things that I think some people just kind of forget. Now the other thing that I was with the summertime coming, and this is kind of new to me because I'm on medication now, and medications can really do things to you that you may not understand, where you may have never had a problem being out in the sun. You could be out there 8-10 hours, doesn't bother you a bit, and now you're on medication, you might be out there 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, and your skin starts burning.
Yeah.
Pretty good, yeah.
It does happen, doesn't it?
It does. There's certain antibiotics, certain blood pressure medicines that it's very good to talk to your primary care provider or even the pharmacist about. Usually the pharmacist is pretty good about putting the warning on the bottle of it, but yeah, and I've done it before, and not even think of it, and I'm a nurse practitioner.
Well,
But I didn't realize it till afterwards. I was floating down the river, and I was like, man, my skin is really burning. But it was because I was on doxycycline, Luckily, I did not get like
Blisters.
lobster blisters or anything like that. But my skin felt like it was on fire. And so even us that have been trained in it forget about stuff like that.
Well, I mean, it just does happen. And here's the other thing. And if you do travel during the summer, and a lot of people vacation, they come here from, they'll come here from the north. And so the north gets a lot of sun, but it's not as direct until, they get down here or Florida or somewhere else where that sun is directly overhead and just beats on them a little bit. Where you are, and that sun is different, can also affect how you are. If you're not used to that direct sun, and all of a sudden you're out there and you're just blazing away, like you said, lobster skin, you can get sun blisters, and those sun blisters with that developing underneath your skin, that can be very dangerous, can't it?
It can, and a lot of people, when they get the blisters, think to pop them. But honestly, if you are not a professional, you shouldn't be popping those blisters. You just need to, because of the risk of infection, because it's the skin underneath it is exposed,
Right.
and if you want to say raw, so it potentially increases your risk of infection for them. So so definitely wherever you are, especially if we are headed south for the summer, that you might think that you might have a, if you want to call it a base tan before you go, but the sun is definitely different the more south that we get. So the SPF maybe 15 might not be doing you much good whenever
have to
you
go
get down
10 bit
there.
higher.
Yes,
Yeah.
to be able to.
And there's nothing wrong with going higher. It
No.
just, do you want the protection? Because you can always overprotect, and if you underprotect and burn, that's when the danger, that's when the
It
damage
is.
is done, isn't
Yeah. I mean, not only, you're increasing your risk for skin cancer, but also the pain of
Yeah, I know.
having a horrible sunburn is
Yeah,
no
I had one in
fun.
Hawaii. Trust me, it blistered on my back. I
Yeah.
didn't even realize it. Well, I'd put on at that. Now we're going back quite a few years, but I had put on lotion.
Yeah.
And I got out in the salt water and it just scraped it right off.
Yeah.
And you don't know that,
No.
And I'm a young guy, and I've been out in the sun, and I used to just tan. And
Yeah.
I very rarely ever burn, and I just tan. I didn't have a Hawaii sun beating on me, though, out there in the water where you're getting not only the direct sun, but
Yeah,
the
the
reflecting sun.
reflection.
And so the next thing I know, my nephew comes up and he goes, "Man, you're getting some blisters on your back." And I because you keep dipping in the water, your sun gets, your back
Yeah.
gets hot, you get down in the cool water, you come back out,
Yeah.
head back down in the water and cool outside. Yeah, I had some pretty nasty blisters. And we didn't pop, but they just eventually pop on their own.
Right.
And it just, well, I don't say bleeds, but it goes through your shirt. It's not attractive. It's not nice. And you do the best with aloe and things you can, but you're right. Your skin is super tender.
It is. It is.
And no matter what, you put that shirt on and it feels like it weighs 100 pounds
Yeah.
and it's barely touching you. So,
Yeah.
So please, if you want to enjoy the summer and the warmer days out there, do so with sun and moderation, but do make sure that you lather up nicely with the right SPF.
Yes, and apply often.
Yeah.
One time, depending on how long you're out in that sun, one time might not cut it.
And especially if you're in a pool or going in and out of the water, it will eventually lessen its effectiveness.
Yeah, and it should say on the back of the bottle how long it's good
Well, some
for.
of them say they're waterproof. I
Yeah,
don't
I
ever
don't
buy
know.
that. It might be waterproof for a while.
Right.
But, so if you get in and out of the water one time, you're probably okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you get in and out of the water 55 times, you probably have kind of washed it off. But these are things but people have gotten burnt badly, even down at the river. I know they had to call it ambulances down to the river to get people and they're absolutely red.
Yeah.
They're on fire.
Yeah.
And you don't want to take that lightly because that can lead to other problems, can't it?
It can. And not necessarily is EMS going to be able to do anything for that, but they're definitely going to get you to the hospital that they might be able to, because we stock a lot of stuff on the ambulance, but not,
Not everything.
everything.
Yeah.
So, but definitely, if anybody has any question about needing any medical care, then call 911, and even if you have a question of whether or not that you think, I don't know if I need to go to the hospital or not, then definitely ask those questions to the personnel on the ambulance, and they're going to be honest with you and use their training and help you decide whether or not to come with them and be seen by the hospital. So, we get that a lot, and that's perfectly okay.
And a lot of times, I've seen ambulances show up where they can treat somebody on the spot. They may have had something they weren't sure of, and the ambulance personnel, the paramedics there, just say, okay, we got this, and this. Are you okay? And a lot of times they are.
Yeah.
They just needed to be treated. Of course, they didn't know how serious it was until
Right.
the paramedics got there, which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, and don't be afraid to tell the paramedics everything that you know that's wrong with you.
Right. Because if they don't know, they're not going to be able to treat it as best as they can. So it's very good to be completely honest with them, even if it's I've had a couple drinks, or because if that is part of the scenario, then that might alter what medications they give you. So the paramedics, RNs, whoever's working on the ambulance, they're not going to think anything about it. because they're trained to be able to work with that kind of stuff. So,
Sure.
but it's very essential to be completely honest with them, because you don't want them to give you something that's going to be a detriment to you.
Emergency Medical Services Week next week.
It is.
Wow. Anyway, we want to tip our cap to them. They do a tremendous job.
It is.
And,
They do.
And probably a thankless job at times, because a lot of times we always hear in the hospital reports about dry runs. Where you get all the way out there and you never know what's going to be there, and then the person says, I'm okay.
Right.
Sometimes you guys check them out. Sometimes they refuse treatment. That's up to them.
Right.
But you'd hate to see them refuse treatment and then 2 days later see them in the ED.
Right. And sometimes, the patient will they'll decide not to come the first time. Mm-hmm. And but that's okay. But if you feel like that maybe you have gotten worse or something has changed with your condition, then don't be afraid to call 911 again. Because a lot of the times we'll go out to people's houses and they apologize for calling. And that's the reason why the paramedics go to school. It's their job to come and make sure everything's okay, and to be able to take you and treat you wherever you need to go. So don't hesitate on calling 911.
So when you do, thank those people, because they do a tremendous job. And want to thank Amber for coming in and celebrating our special week with us. And of course, Amber's out in the emergency department, so you get to see her all the time out there now.
Yeah.
You kind of have taken over the reins.
Well, I kind of am kind of everywhere.
You're kind of everywhere.
I mean, I have a lot of experience, and I love my job, and I love working in healthcare and helping people. So I'll try and be wherever I need to be for the hospital. If that means in the clinic, I still work in the clinic on Saturdays, and in the ER and the ambulance, wherever they may need. So we need it. We need the hospital for our community, and they do good things, and so we want to keep it here.
But you have a wealth of knowledge in so many different fields that makes it easy, maybe even easier for you to understand where some of these other things are coming from when people talk to you about it.
I do. And I have, and EMS will say, they, even when it came to COVID, and everybody was very thankful and everything, but sometimes EMS gets forgotten because they're pre-hospital. And so we get to take this week next week and get to celebrate them next week. And so if anybody sees them out and about in the community, definitely tell them thank you for the job that they have done, because we have a lot of good paramedics and EMTs that work on the ambulance. So I am very thankful that I get to call them my staff. They were my coworkers and previously, and I am very excited to be able to have such very, very good staff.
Well, we appreciate them. And if anybody has any questions about this special week, can they give you a call?
They definitely can. My office resides in the ED since I'm over the emergency department too. So, you can give me a call and let me know what all's going on with you.
729-6626. What's your extension out
4400.
4400. And talk with Amber, and she'll be more than happy to give you more details if you want to find out more about, and maybe you'd like to become an EMT or a paramedic, and want to find out about that, or how to become one, she can give you the breakdown.
And I've got big plans. For our departments, and not everybody knows that we are a training center, and so in the near future, be looking out for an EMT program that Salem Hospital is going to put on. So
that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Amber, for coming
and
spending some time with us on our spotlight on the Salem Memorial Hospital and Amber Hogan. Keep it here, KSMO. We have civic happenings on the way next.